Susan, thank you for coming here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've known Susan for 12 years. Our oldest, her son and my daughter, were together since kindergarten. But on my phone, she's like Susan, Ari's mom. And I can tell you about how best to train the puppy and about the kid's character. But I had to say I had to Google or YouTube you and read more and learn more about your professional career in preparation for this. And now I even much more appreciate you coming here and taking the time to do this for us. It is incredible. You should actually recommend. Do it on your friends. Learn about your friends and you're going to discover a lot more. It's really fun and interesting. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Speaking a dream force in front of thousands of people, and so you're speaking fortune with Adam Wojcicki on the most influential list, on the most powerful list, and everything. And today, in Icons, Israeli Women in Tech Group. So we are excited. So I'll do a small introduction just to kind of save time, and then I'll ask a few questions.
Sure.
I want to kind of focus what I'm asking more about gender and balance and those things and motherhood, and then I'll open it for the group to ask whatever they want to ask. Born and raised in Silicon Valley, went to Gun High School, oldest of 3 daughters. Dad is a physics professor in Stanford, and mom is an educator. Studied history and literature at Harvard, graduated with honors. Thought about career in academics, ended up with the Master in Science and Economics at University of California, Santa Cruz, and an MBA from UCLA. In 1999, she wanted to make a side living and leased her garage for $1,700 a month to a startup. Later joined the startup while being 4 months pregnant as employee number 16, first marketing manager, and probably first pregnant Google employee ever. Before joining Google, she worked at Intel on marketing and was also a consultant with Bain. At the time she joined, Google had no revenues. Today, that changed a little bit. Stayed with Google, led their advertising. This is probably the part you all know. Led their advertising business, advocated for the purchase of YouTube, and is now since February of 2014 CEO of YouTube. Did I get it right? I heard you also say that some milestone in your life kind of correlates. Having each kid correlates with a milestone in Google. So that with the oldest one, Google started. Right? Yeah. So let me.
We all want to know which baby am I? You keep asking me.
And I think I heard someone ask you, so what's next? Is it going to be about the grandchildren? And I thought, no, that's too early. There's a lot of time for that. There's a lot going to happen before the grandchildren. So I think like the most obvious question that I want to ask is, how do you balance it all? I mean, there's you find time for this, for kind of inspire other women in the community. You're a spouse. You celebrated 18 years of married. You're a sister. You're a daughter. You're a mom, and you're a CEO of YouTube. How do you do it all?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely not easy. As I'm sure you can all imagine. And I mean, I think some of the things that have helped me throughout my career have just been putting limits in terms of the number of hours that I can work. And so I've always, first I really had to leave every single day at a certain time because my children were in daycare, and as you all know, if you're late, you get charged $1 a minute. And more importantly, your child is really, really mad at you when you pick them up. So like from early in my career, I always had to leave at a certain time. And so I've always tried to make time at home, my 6 to 9 p.m. time, be really special family time. And so that has just meant that I've had less time in the office than some of my male counterparts. And so what I've really done is just try to prioritize and really try to focus. Like, what are the things that are the most important to get done? And I find it can be really distracting. There are like so many things that happen in the day and so many different opportunities. And so, like, how do you just stay focused, and how do you see like the 1 or 2 things that are most important to get done, and how do you get them done? And I mean, there are times that it's not easy. I mean, I have lots of times where I'm not doing such a good job balancing things in one way or another. Like, I'll have forgotten, like, my son will say, like, how come everybody at school brought their goggles today and I didn't? Like, they sent an email to all the parents and they were all of them read that except you. And so, like,
compare a Google Glass.
And so I've come up with some techniques, like I have auto forwarding for my older children to make sure that they always get the emails too. And so then I tell them, like, well, you were on the email also. Like, you need to read all the emails. And so I try to do things like that to get them to take responsibility for their life. But there are times where I'm just like, yeah, I feel bad. Like, that form wasn't filled out on time. Or, you know, the little bags that we do, the Michelin out bags. Like that time I was like so busy and I was like, wait, now I have to cook hamantashes? or like not even my kids, but like some kid in their class. And I have to do that like tomorrow morning. It needs to be in a decorated bag. I mean, there are times like that where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just too much. I can't get this done.
But any comfort, it happens to everyone. Everyone, it doesn't matter how much you're not working, you also forget the form.
Right.
Do you feel guilty?
Well, so I think when I first started out, I did feel guilty about working. I did feel like, oh, this is hard to balance both, and that like for my kids getting the same care. But I do feel like, I'll just say now I don't feel guilty, because I feel like overall they've benefited a lot, and I feel like it's kind of part of their life, and I see that there are some things that are harder, and there's some things that have been benefits for them, and I feel like, you know, as long as they have really good care and you're able to make sure that when you're not there, the other, whoever is taking care of your children are doing a great job, then I really don't feel guilty. But I feel bad when the form isn't filled out and my kids are mad at me. You know, and there are times at work, sometimes like there'll be some like, you know, 100-page deck that was sent out and like everybody read it in great detail, and you know, it's hard like to actually read it sometimes at the level that I wanted to read it. So there are times, but at the end of the day, like I keep reminding myself, like I don't think those are the details that really matter. At the end, I think like at work, the details for me that really matter are which I really focus on, like, are we going the right place? Are we focused on the big ideas? Like, are we doing the things well? And like, how can I be better at doing them? And I feel like in some ways, like actually being a mom and being a parent has actually helped me be better at my work. Because like, first of all, I am not super territorial, so I've always just been like, I've been so busy. I've been like, look, if someone can do a better job, like that's fine. I'm going to give that to them. And so really being very open and like working well. Like I've always tried to hire really, really senior people to work on my teams. And then I've given them as much as I feel like they can do, because like I'm incented to do that because I'm busy. And so the more they can do, the better. And so as a result, I've actually attracted some of the like most senior people because they've realized like I want to work with them at a higher level and be able to help them execute in a really good way. And I think that has had a lot of benefits for me in my career. I was also just lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. But other people were too, and I didn't give up. And I think giving up is really, there were times it's really hard where you just, you know, there were times where I just was like, maybe I should quit, maybe I should do something different. You know, there was like this one time I came to work and I realized I was wearing 2 black shoes, but they were like different. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need more help because this is not working for me.
I think you were just fashion forward because my 16-year-old daughter dresses up on purpose like this. I know Google gives 18 weeks of paid maternity and 12 weeks of paid paternity, which is amazing and not mandated. Did you take advantage of it? And you know, people are saying now, Rachel, who works with me, is expecting. And when I heard my husband said, "Oh, just tell Rachel to do the Marissa Meyer," so it's like became an expression. Come back after 2 days. What do you know? I'm not asking to talk about Marissa, but what do you think about women, you know, coming back early? Did you really take advantage of all of the time that you were able to take advantage of and not work?
Yeah. Well, I had 5 different maternity leaves at Google, and they all had different periods of time. And so the first maternity leave, literally, like there was, Google. I don't even know if we had maybe like someone who did HR in their part-time of their job, but it really was not established. And so, I always took the time that Google gave us, and I personally hadn't felt like it was really, I needed that time. Like I had a hard time getting out of the house earlier. Like I don't know how other people do that. I've become a really big advocate of paid maternity leave because I realized actually when I'm on my 5th maternity leave that most women in the United States don't get maternity leave, and that 25% of American women go back to work like that was really upsetting to me when I learned that, and that's when I became a really big advocate, and I wrote a Wall Street Journal op-ed about it because I felt like that was just really, really a shame, and that there were just not enough women leaders who understood the implications of what that means. So I've always tried to take it. I've always tried to be at home. I think it's really such a special time, and on the other hand, like it's hard to come back. You miss your baby, but then it's hard. Like the whole transition, it was never easy, and every single time I always thought like, gosh, can I do it again? And then I remember, well, I felt this way last time, and I did, and so I think once you've done it once, it makes it a lot easier because you can do it, but it's not easy.
In Israel, by law, everybody gets 3 months of paid maternity. Social Security pays for it, and then if you want to extend and stay for an additional 3 months at home, then the workplace is mandated to keep your spot. Or maybe up to a year. Up to a year. Up to a year.
I mean, I keep reminding employers, it's just not that much time in the scheme of things. Like, I kind of look at that in perspective, and I say, look, like when Google started, and you like looked at all the people who were starting, and then you looked at me, and I was this, pregnant woman at 5 months. Like, would you have anticipated that, almost 18 years later, that like a 1% still there working would have been me? I don't think people could have anticipated that, and so you kind of look at them and be like, yeah, I was on maternity leave, but I've been there for 18 years, and so I think maternity leaves are a relatively small part of the overall work experience, and so I just think it's the wrong thing for employers to focus on. They should just give people their maternity leave, let them enjoy it, let them have their time with the baby. It's really important, I think, for the bonding and for people choose to breastfeed, all of those decisions. But then again, it's like a small percentage of time. So when people come back to work, like they're there for the long term.
I read somewhere colleagues assumed she would give up her career when she had a second child. Did that thought ever occur to you?
No, I never. It didn't ever occur to me. But I did find it frustrating. Like it doesn't happen to me anymore. But you would always ask me, like, oh, are you gonna go back to work? Like, who's gonna take care of your children? I still get this question all the time. Like, well, how do you balance? I mean, you guys asked it for me here, which is fine. But I think it was like for a different reason. But I do get asked a lot. Well, how do you balance work and family? And actually, like at the one of the Fortune conferences, I was asked that. And then afterwards, the Emanuel brothers brought it up, and they were like, well, Ari and Ram, I don't know if you guys, one's an agent in Hollywood, and one is a mayor of Chicago. And they were like, well, you didn't ask us about our families. We would love to tell you about our families. Like, why did you ask Susan? We would love to know more. I think one of my questions has just been like, wait, why are you asking me about how I balance home and family? So I was like, by asking me that, you're implying that my job is to be at home, and clearly I'm not. So really, you're asking me, like, well, who is doing your job at home? And I think, like, here you guys, I understand, like, here you guys are asking because you're all in a similar situation and you're kind of trying to figure it out. But there's some implicit expectation that the woman is the one who does these jobs, and the woman is the one who's managing the home. And so by asking, well, how are you balancing your home and life? Like, you're kind of asking, like, well, who is doing your job at home? And so, I think that's just like an expectation that is set upon us, and that makes it really hard because a lot of times you're like, well, how are you supposed to answer those questions? Well, like, I have a daycare, babysitter, nanny, right, grandmother. I mean, right? So.
I get, my husband took a year off and stayed home with the kids, and he got a lot of social criticism. He would go to parents' meeting, he would go to the price structure, and he got people look at it differently. I think in Israel, differently than here, most moms actually have to work and have to work full time, probably because of the economic situation, which is different. So it's less of a question. But I also remember here, I'm getting like, oh, you're going to work again in second grade? Like, again, you're going to work? So I'm going to ask you a different question. Moving from maternity, you have been working at the same company with your husband for several years now. How I can't imagine doing this. I know now it's a big company, and probably not even in the same geographical location. How is this? Is this a good thing, a bad thing? Any advice? Sometimes I see many startups that has a couple that are founding it together or are partnering together.
Yeah. I mean, I think for the most part, first of all, it's been really convenient in the sense that we go to the same place, and so if we need to do kid pickups or sign forms, like it's convenient that it's in the same location, and we can coordinate schedules. So I think like it's really useful from that perspective. It was a little harder kind of as I rose through the organization because sometimes like his group would wind up being in my group, and then he would have to change jobs, and that wasn't great for him. But you know, I think he was able to always find like an area that he was really interested in and be able to grow himself. So I think that was kind of the conflict, is you can't be in the same area. But yeah, and like you also have to make sure you don't talk about work all the time. So like luckily we just don't at home. We pretty much just talk about our family and friends and kids.
But that's a good rule. Just don't talk about work if you're in a situation where you work with your spouse.
I mean, I think unless like one of us is in like upset about something, like something's happening at work. Like the good news is like I can understand that and I understand what's happening, and so I feel like I can offer support for that. But it's not like in general, like our dinner conversation isn't about work. We try to not do that unless either of us really need support in what's happening in the office.
Even though it's illegal to ask in a work interview or in that kind of situation about baby plans, I think I hear from many women founders at least that when they come to investors or when they come, if they're at the right age, they are being like directly asked. You plan to have a baby, you're pregnant now, what's going to happen later? What would be a good advice on how to actually answer those questions?
I mean, first of all, they're not supposed to ask you those questions.
But they do, right? Is anyone?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, it was interesting when I I think there are different ways to handle it, but you know, I think first of all you don't have to disclose that to them because they're not supposed to be asking in the first place. I think the reason you may want to disclose it to them is because you may want to know, well, how are they going to react when you tell them that you're pregnant or going on maternity leave? And so it was actually interesting. Like when I joined Google, like at first I didn't tell them I interviewed with them, and I got really, really close to getting the offer. And then I did tell them for that reason, is because I wanted to know how they were going to respond. And I think at first they weren't really sure what to say, because realistically they probably didn't know anyone who was pregnant ever. So it was like a shock for them. And so I think at first they didn't really know what to say, but then they thought about it and they came back and they were like, we think it's great and we're going to build a daycare. Which was so sweet. And I was like, you guys, we don't even have 20 employees. I really don't you're really set up to build a daycare right now. But it was sweet. So I kind of got like the understanding that they were like, supportive of it, even though they had no concept of really what it meant or what it entailed. So that was like a really good sign for me. And over time, like I think it worked out. I think they've always been really supportive of families, and that's like one of the things I've tried to do. I mean, for those of you who are founders, running your own company, I always brought my baby to Google events early on. My children have been on stage at like company meetings. And like I've heard from a lot of other women at Google that really like was influential for them. Like it really made a difference to them because they saw that it was okay and that you didn't have to be like hiding your family. And so like if you go to the Google daycare, if you go to the Google lunch, cafe today, you see like there are tons and tons of high chairs. And it's because people are always bringing their kids in and their families in. And I personally I feel really happy when I see that. That's like great. People feel comfortable to bring their families in. And so, but yeah, different companies are going to be different. And so I think, you guys also have an opportunity to choose the company that you're part of. Like, do you want to be part of a company that isn't supportive, or do you want to be part of a company that is? And if you want to be a competitive company today, you want to have diversity in your company. Like they should want diversity in their company, and they really should be flexible with that.
I heard you speaking one of the conference saying you're constantly asking yourself, what can I do to make a difference? And, you're coming to speak to groups like this. You can talk a lot about those topics. You change from within Google. You write op-eds. What would be a good advice for this group? What can they do to actually make a difference?
I think first of all, one of the things that I've always found really supportive, and that actually got me through some of my really hard times, I think first of all was like, I always had friends at Google that were supportive of me. And I know from like all, there's so many women leaders that have come out of Google. You look at a lot of the women in the Valley and like, where did they come? They all came from Google. And I can tell you from working with all of them, we work to support each other in different ways. And there were times that all of us went through a hard time and wound up calling one another and saying, oh, like this happened or this was hard. So I think people need support and people need friends. And I always found that by having friends at work, that it just made everything better. And I found that actually by having a group of women together, we were actually able to create change in a way that we weren't as individuals. And so I think, first of all, the fact that you're coming together and supporting each other and discussing these issues is like the first step, because that's how you get the support and the understanding and the network. And then I think the second thing is, like, as you become leaders, I think it's great. I always point out, like, you can always mentor and support other people. So no matter who you are, like, if you are a high school student, like, you can support, like, elementary school students, right? If you're in college, you can support the high school students. So no matter where you are in your career, you are, in some ways, have a better vantage point than a whole bunch of other people. And so I'm sure there are, like, a lot of really young women that are in college that would love to hear from all of you and from your experiences. And so I think there's always an opportunity to mentor other young women and to be a role model for them.
I mean, speaking about mentors, I heard you say one of those conferences also, that you always had actually male mentors.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, is there a stage in your career when you don't need a mentor anymore? Do you still have mentors, people that you see as your mentors? And do you have mentees? Do you mentor others?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're always learning. I mean, I think particularly in the field of business, it's almost like an apprenticeship where you're learning by seeing other people and by seeing what they do and how do they handle issues. Like, when there's like a meeting and you have two teams and they're in conflict with each other and someone needs to be the tiebreaker, like how does that happen? How does that person do that and not alienate one as opposed to the other? And so I think, I was really lucky that I don't think anyone came to me, by the way, and was like, I'm going to be your mentor. Like nobody ever did that. But what I noticed is that there were people, very senior people at Google that were like, saw that I was working really hard and creating good value, and they were supportive. Like there were times where I would have like a bad day and they would like send me an email afterwards saying, I think it really went well, or like, like it'll go better tomorrow, like let me help you. I mean, there were like, there were times that people reached out and they helped me, and there were times where I was stuck and they broke it for me in one way or another, like, oh, you should like work on this. And so I think that made a really big difference for me throughout my career, and I certainly, like, in the leadership position I'm in, I'm trying to work with as many women at Google and YouTube, and like when I see them stuck in one way or another, I try to reach out and make sure that they're not.
So you think it's more of the mentor's role to reach out when you can than for the mentee to be looking for someone?
I mean, I think it's really hard if somebody comes to you and says, I think it's hard to say, like, will you be my mentor? Especially if it's someone who's really busy. But I'll just say, like, people who kind of consistently do a great job and then, come and ask me questions like, oh, I'm at this point in my life, should I do this or should I do that? Or, oh, I feel like I'm stuck. I like always, I can see that those people are working hard, and I want to help them. So I think it's more about, I think it's both. I think it's the people that are around you that know you, that you feel you can learn from, and then like you being persistent and keep reaching out. Like I never quit, but I kept saying, like, I need help with something, or I'm stuck, or I'm really angry at everybody here, and I need a day off, right? And people, so there were, I mean, I'm not saying it was always easy, but there were people who were willing to help me or tell me how I could have done better.
And today, when you're a mom and you look back at your parents, what do you think that anything that they did to kind of make you who you are? I mean, of course, everything they did is to make you who you are today. But anything that you take from them and you give to your daughters or to all of your kids?
Yeah. It's interesting. There's actually this Time magazine article that just came out this morning about this. And it was really interesting. Actually, it's interesting because they interviewed a lot of families, and they talk about the families, and they talk about up on the university campus, and I think one of the things that was really interesting and helpful for me was just like exposure to a lot of really interesting and smart people who are just really curious. And I think one of the like skills that gave to me is the ability, like I don't feel intimidated by other people, and I think there's like there's a lot of intimidation that happens in the workplace where people feel like this person is smarter than me, these people know more than I do, and so you don't always feel like I can do this or I can like ask a question, or like nobody understands what's going on. You feel like, oh well, everybody else understands, but really nobody understands. And so I think like that experience of kind of feeling like you can always challenge or ask a question or like really helped by growing up on the university campus. And my mom certainly is that way, where she's just very outspoken and always asking questions and like not afraid to voice her opinion. And I think that was a really, really useful skill to learn, is just to like not be embarrassed and just be open with asking whatever is on your mind. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of like, even like being a mom now, watching some of my kids, like I noticed that a lot of times like the girls in school are like, they're really good at drawing and they're like always good, kind of ahead of the class. Like they're not the messy ones that are always in trouble. I mean, some of them are, but there's something good about like learning how to just deal with a little bit of trouble, a little bit of like messiness in your life. Because when you're running a company, like not everything is perfect and not everything is in order, and sometimes like you make mistakes. And so I think it's really good to become comfortable with that.
What don't you have time to do? What would you like to do if you had more time?
Well, let's see. See my friends. If you hi, so like it's really great to see some of you here. And I used to exercise in the mornings before I had a baby.
Which one?
The last one. But my current baby has ruined my exercise schedule in the morning. And so now I have to exercise when I'm at work. I would like to exercise more and see my friends more.
It's like, and how did in preschool? Me too.
Yeah, I do. Like rolling.
Yeah, and I'll ask you one last question, and then I'm gonna open. I open the stage for them to ask questions. Do you have any general advice, not necessarily gender related, to women? They're in the middle of their career, they're mid management. Just how to do better in whatever it is you do. Something that you wish you would have told, like if you could have gone back in time and tell your young self to do differently, or to do better, or to do more.
I mean, I think one of the things, for me, like, and when I see people kind of in the middle of their career, in the middle of management, I mean, I think first of all, like knowing your area really well and being good at what you do is always gonna, like, that's always gonna be the most important thing. But the second thing, I think is always to continue learning and pushing yourself. Like, how can you do more? How can you do better? And I see that, like, as a manager, I see the young people who are like, they know, like, I can tell they're really into it. They're doing a great job, and they're like pushing themselves, and they're asking hard questions, and that's important. And then I think also one of the things that I've kind of tried to do is try to figure out, like, are there any shortcuts? Like, is there something that is happening that's really interesting and exciting that nobody else sees that you see, right? So in a sense, like that, like I kind of saw that with Google. Like, I mean, that's just like I was at Intel, like at the time Intel was like a really 60,000 employees. It was like a great company, and then I saw like the internet was happening, and Google's search technology was better than anything else. And I mean, it was a pretty crazy time. Like I just bought a house, I had debts from my student loans, right? And then I decided to join a startup that had no revenue, which is why I had rented them part of my house in the first place, since I needed the rental income. And so, like, I mean, that was sort of crazy, but I think in retrospect, like, it was also where I saw a shortcut in some ways. I was like, well, here's something that's taking off. It's really exciting. And, the amazing thing is, like, I went and I called so many of my friends and tried to get them to join, and it was really hard to get other people who want to take that opportunity too. So I do think, like, when you see that opportunity, or when you see the shortcut, or when you see something really exciting, like, you should take it. and do it, because you might not have that chance again, and make it happen.
So let's open it up for your questions. Please go. And if you can just like one quick present yourself.
Mika from Take and Make. So I wanted to know, when you joined YouTube, obviously it was like post proof of concept and everything.
Yeah.
So what were your goals as an incoming CEO to take that company to the next level?
You know, when I first joined, I really had no idea, because I didn't know the company yet, and I didn't know the people or the problems. But the reason I decided to join is just because I always like to say, I like to know which way the wind is blowing, and I could see that the wind was blowing in the favor of YouTube. Like, I could see that there was going to be a lot of online video consumption, that it was a better viewing experience. It's on demand, it's social, it's global, and so I could see all of these opportunities, and so and I felt like YouTube was a leader in this space, and so that's in the end when I took the job. And by the way, like when I was, like Larry asked me about that, like I didn't have a lot of time to think about it. It wasn't like he was like, have a week and come back. He was like, you know, what do you think of YouTube, and would you like to go to YouTube? So I kind of had to make a decision, like right there on the moment. Like, well, if I'm like, well, I'm not really sure, like I might not have that second chance, kind of like I said again. So I had to be like, yeah, I want to take it. Like, I want to do it. And I had to, like, in my head, do that calculation in, like, a sub-second and say, winds are blowing this way. I want to go there.
But you advocated for the purchase.
I had advocated for the purchase. And so, like, I've been following it, and I've been paying attention. I was a believer.
Right.
So, but, yeah, you know, I think when you get, I mean, I realize that there are two different management styles and two different approaches. One is, like, which is how I had done it now. Is like I had built a lot of those teams from the ground up. Like I'm number one, or I'm here with like 5 people, and we're building a product, and and then it grows into an organization that has like thousands of people in it, right? And so at that point, like people don't question you. They're not like, oh, well, like why is she running it? It's like, well, she's been here since the beginning, and she did all this stuff, and like of course she should be running it. But then you go to a new company, and they're like, well, we've been here since the beginning. Why is she here now, right? So you kind of need to prove yourself over again, and you need to like make sure that you understand everything, because they understand everything, because they've been there for a long time. So you need to like. So I think when you first come into a company, you have to be careful about saying you're going to change too much up front. You have to get to know the people and understand like what their issues are and understand it deeply, because otherwise you could make a change and not really understand the implications of it, and it would be a problem. So.
Jenny.
I'm Jenny from Start to Go.
Okay.
I would like to ask about 2 approaches to building a startup.
Sure.
So I think that this is the CEO of Airbnb who said that you need our overnight success took 1,000 days.
You need what?
Overnight success took 1,000 days.
Yeah.
So a lot of startups are struggling for years with
Yeah.
pivoting and changing their idea and spending a lot of time and money.
Yeah.
And there is the approach of fail quickly.
Yeah.
So try it, don't waste your time and your
Yeah.
investors' money.
Yeah. I think I mean I have lots of things that haven't gone well too, and I mean so the products I do think there is something. I mean you have to learn from the data early on and make a decision quickly about is this a success or not a success, and I mean some of the products that I've worked on, like I would say that like the day we launched, I was like, this is going to be a success. I could tell from the numbers, I could see from the growth. And then there are things like you launch and like nobody really cares. And then that's kind of the worst launch. Like nobody cared about what you did. And so I think you just have to respond to that and be like, well, why didn't it work? So I'm like a big believer in being very honest with yourself, very honest about like your numbers. Like don't try to inflate things. Don't try to be defensive. Like I've actually said that's like some of the best advice I ever had. So I had this issue where Eric Schmidt, who's our CEO, I used to do the forecast and for revenue, and early on in the company's life, and like we missed, and so Eric was like, you missed, your forecast was wrong, and I was like, no, the sales team was wrong. The sales team should have. Of course, it was never me, right? And he was like, you shouldn't be so defensive. Like you're being too defensive, and I realize that's like a skill like a lot of senior people is to be able to accept responsibility for it. Like junior people always deny it. They always say it wasn't me. It was her. It was him. It was like my cat, my dog, right? And so senior people are like, I hear you. Like I think we made a mistake here, and we're gonna fix it. And so I think you have to be really honest about the data and address it quickly.
I think.
Hi.
So Adi,
Yeah.
founder, the owner of Listings, we do text messaging between speak up. So. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So my question is more a general Silicon Valley question, but it very much applies to Google. A lot of the women here are founders, and most of our investors are male. And it's not just the VCs.
Yeah.
Actually, my question is more about the angel investors. A lot of my angel investors were early on at Google or Facebook and made some money, and then they invest in their friends and people they believe in.
Yeah.
But women don't tend to do that. And I wanted to ask you, why do you think that is, and what's the way to change it and maybe make them, well, my hypothesis is they're not confident enough in their ability to invest.
Yeah. Why do I think women don't invest in their friends' startups? I mean, I don't, I've seen that even a little bit, like, just with, like, I haven't been a super big investor, and I know a lot of these people. I think part of, sometimes it's time. I mean, that maybe in my case, it's been, like, a time, like, investing and like, filling out all the paperwork and then following them, and, like, I just don't really have that much time to do it. That might be one. I think second of all, there's just a lot less women, right? So like the number of women, and then like you kind of look at like all of these, like how many successful women are there out there that are investing? Is it representative of the number of successful women in tech overall? Is it percentage-wise less because maybe they're busier?
It's about a third. I looked at the data.
It's about a third.
It's about a third, yeah. So it's not even just the senior. It's not like CEOs necessarily. It's at Facebook you'll have, or at Google you'll have someone who's the director of product management investing in their friend. And not to say they're not busy, but it just seems like not a thing that they do. I don't know why. I'm trying to figure it out because I think if they had more role models that did it, then it would propagate.
I mean, one of the things that I found really useful, and I have invested in these cases, when people like reach out to me and say. And I've had a lot of people say, like, I'm, like a lot of times it's been a women leader, a women fund. They're like, I'm doing this, and like I don't have a lot of female investors. Like, and I'd love for you to invest. Like, are you interested? Like, I actually do respond. So people, I think you just need to be more proactive with them and ask them, like, I'd love to have you. Are you, it's actually very interesting. Like when they reach out, they're like, I have all these people and they're like interested in investing, but I'd really love to have you invest. And that, I do look at it and pay attention.
Here.
Hi, Susan. I'm Kira. I'm an attorney with Wilson Sonsini. I have a question about management. So I have a team nowhere near as large as yours.
Yeah.
But you talked about guilt with kids. And
Yeah.
I've learned to prioritize kids and come home, right?
Yeah.
So that guilt is set.
Yeah.
In terms of incentivizing your team and finding time for your team, never mind friends. That's but in a self-serving way, I'm at a stage where I feel guilty because I know I cannot spend as much time with the people that contribute so much to ultimately sort of the organization's success. How do you balance that? How did you learn to be a manager?
Yeah.
How did you apply that?
Why do you feel like you can't spend enough time with them? So you can't spend
Because
enough time in the office?
I have children, customers, right? Kind of. So you have to balance it out and prioritize. And certainly in my space where I'm in the service industry, customers. And then again, I spend as much time, but every day I literally walk away feeling. Certainly, actually, with a lot of my women associates who tend to like to spend more personal time.
I mean, I think, maybe in some sense I have that issue too. Like, I have lots of people come up and they're like, I want to do one-on-ones, I want to do lunch, I want to do advice, and like, I almost always have to say no because like I can't scale in that way. I mean, I think one of the things, first of all, in my schedule, I try to make sure it's balanced. So if you feel like you need some more time with your associates, you can look at your schedule and be like, maybe I have 2 hours extra. What's the most efficient way of using that? So like your one-on-one schedule, your team meetings, But then I also try to, so when people come and say, I want to meet with you, usually what I do is I say, like, I just don't do that. But then what I will sometimes do is I'll do a series of, like, skip level meetings. Like, I'll come and meet with everybody who, is reporting to someone who's my reports, right? So in that 1 hour, I'm meeting with, say, 15 people as opposed to one person. And so I think one question is, like, is there a structure that you can use, like, if you had like an extra hour every 2 hours, some kind of meeting structure to work with, like a lunch. Like let's say you do like once a month, you do a lunch with like your women associates, something like that. Like I'm just saying, so I'm kind of trying to think about structures and programs. So I also do like a birthday meeting, like everyone whose birthday is in July, I'll meet with them at YouTube for 1 hour. And so you think about it, like over the course of the year, it's only 12 hours, but yet I've made myself available to all like Bay Area based employees, and that's a few thousand. So, but it's only been 12 hours of time. So they like if they choose not to come, that's up to them, right? But so I kind of try to think about programs that go far but aren't that much time. Yeah. Yes.
Ilana from STIA. So one of the challenges for a founder is always to look way ahead and try to understand where everything is heading.
Yeah.
And I've seen that you guys launched Backstage, and and obviously you're it's clear that you're putting a lot of focus on social. And what are the things that are kind of letting you do that? What are the things that are kind of in your mind when you're taking those decisions? Like maybe give us a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Specifically like about Backstage because that's a big thing that I think
Yeah. Well, that one I can't talk about that one because that one like was a rumor.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's a rumor. So but in general, I think like as a CEO or as a founder, like incentives is like your biggest and most important thing, role is to make sure the company is going the right direction. And also, like what I think about, I sort of think about things in two categories. Like these are the things that I just know are going to happen. Like Google's really good at search ranking. Like I can't add that much to our search ranking team. They're like people who are 1,000 times smarter than me on that. But like, is there something that we're not doing? Like I don't have the right person on. Is there like a way we're talking about our products or building our products or working together like that no one else is focused on it? And so those are the things I think like as a CEO you need to be understanding, right? Like what's the big landscape? What are you not doing? Where do you not have the right staffing? And it's challenged because like I think the way I get the ideas and the context is by talking to people in the market. Like it's just like knowing what's happening, hearing people's feedback. And that feedback is from customers, from users, like, for us it's also like artists and entertainers and like movie, studios. And then, sometimes just being able to, I always find like if you can't articulate your strategy simply and clearly, then you don't know it. So like I ask people like, well, like, and I'll do this with like people who, like other CEOs or or small, small companies, right, where they're getting started. Like, explain to me like why your product is better than someone else's, or why I should invest in you, right? And if it takes them like 15 minutes to describe it to me, like they don't know the answer. Like they need to be able to explain to me crisply and quickly. And I'll also say like, can they draw a diagram on one piece of paper and explain to me like why their industry is better? And if they can do that, then like usually they can. So in some sense, like I'm focused on how you get there. It's a I think you need some combination of talking to people and some combination of time just thinking. Without like if you're scheduled every minute of the day, you can't think anymore. So you need some time that is free.
Do you do that? Do you have any scheduled free time to reflect?
I'm trying to have more and more free time to reflect. And like, I mean, the reality is like I get some of my ideas sometimes when I'm not in the office. Because like, I mean, just last night I was like walking around, I was like with my daughter who doesn't, my like little one who doesn't like go to bed easily. And I was like outside and it was quiet and like she was beginning to fall asleep, and like I started thinking about my strategy presentation, and like I actually had much better ideas than I did when I was in the office, because it was quiet and peaceful, and like my brain was sort of down. So then I came, when I got back to my computer, I like wrote them down. But so I do think you just need that time away sometimes.
We'll do one last question. So raise your hand if you think your question is a really good one for last.
No pressure.
Hi, my name is Nana. I run a medical device startup with Clinical Care. So my question is about hiring and twofold.
Yeah.
One is if you have any advice on avoiding biases in hiring, especially the tendency to hire like me type of people.
Yeah.
And the second is if you have any advice on how to retain top talent, especially in the super competitive, Silicon Valley environment.
Yeah. I mean, so Google has a specific way of doing hiring, and it's done that pretty much since the beginning. And I believe like they took a lot of this from university hiring, and so all hiring is basically done by a committee. And so if you talk about like product managers at Google, there's like a set of people who all interview the product managers, and then everyone writes up their feedback, and then all that feedback is reviewed by a committee. And then I'm like the second committee, and I review the feedback of the committee and the feedback of all of those individuals. And so as a result, you have a diversity of opinions. You have quite a lot of facts, and people I can't just like hire anyone. And so it actually makes it hard. Like people send me resumes and like love to hire them, but I can't because there's a committee, and that committee is going to go through this double committee process and make a decision on that candidate. And so I think having hiring committees really is helpful, and taking it really seriously. That's one of the things Google did early on in its life that really made a big difference, was put a lot of time. I'd say I probably spent 40 to 50% of my time in the early days of hiring, interviewing and hiring, and like really making it a big deal. Like we're gonna hire great people, and making time to be able to do that. And I do think like great people want to come to a company where they can make a difference. I think that's another place Google has done really well, is to like and even like YouTube, I shouldn't say even YouTube is making a huge difference in so many different parts of people's lives. And we are a company. We have a mission. We talked about the freedoms of YouTube. Like YouTube enables freedom of expression, freedom of opportunity, freedom of information, and freedom to belong for groups to be able to come together. So you sort of talk about these high-level missions, and people want to be part of something bigger. They want to be part of something important. So when they come to you and join your company, like why does this medical device matter? Like, is it saving lives? Like people want their time to really matter.
So with that, we're going to conclude.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.